All right, guys, we got a special edition of Talking Preps today. I got Chris Hughes, my man. Hadn't seen you in a while, Chris. How you been?
I've been doing really good, Langston. Thank you.
I understand you like Steve Austin. You got a new back?
I do. Bionic Man. I've got a battery pack back there, a stimulator. I'm a remote control guy, and I'm back feeling better than ever. So I'm really happy.
Until somebody gets a hold of that remote control.
I keep that under lock and key.
Down below me, we got one of the foremost voices in high school sports, Nick Stevens of HSOT, high school overtime up in the Raleigh area. Nick, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks, Langston.
Yeah, man. People say we can't have the enemy on the show.
Oh, there's no such thing.
we're all in this together, man, to promote high school sports. That young man does one of the best jobs. You've been doing it since, what, 06? Is that right?
Yeah, fall 2006 is when I started at WRAL, and we launched high school OT in August of 2008.
Yeah, and they're trying to take over the state. You guys got me nervous down here. And then down below to my right is Randall Clark, trainer extraordinaire in Charlotte. Randall, say hello to everybody.
What's going on, everybody?
All right, well, we got like I said, a special edition. Nick, you put out a really interesting article on your website yesterday, being Tuesday, talking about a possible realignment plan. You know, down in my way, you know, Charlotte Catholic gets all the attention, you know, why they're always winning everything. They're cheating, they're you know, breaking the rules. And I'm sure you guys get some of the same things up your way. Kind of explain to people what your proposal might do to alleviate that and some of the big, humongous 4A schools playing 4A schools that half the size.
So, yeah, you know, one of the things I said in the article was I think we have to get past the premise of the accusing the charter schools and parochial schools of cheating. They're not cheating. You know, they're following the rules that are set by the NCHSAA. Now, I think that the problem is that the rules give unfair advantages in certain areas. So, you know, I think we have to stop saying the cheating part, which is a big thing on social media, and that's part of the problem that we have. So instead of continuing to talk about the old arguments that everybody keeps having, I sat down and I was like, you know, there's got to be a solution to this. It makes it, we're not going to find a perfect one, but makes it more fair for everybody. And so that was my goal. And I played with a lot of numbers as far as multipliers go. I played with how many ways to break it up. And of course, we've all reported on the fact that the NCHSAA's amendment proposal that would have allowed it to move to 5 or 6 or however many classes failed. But there's kind of a loophole to that. Q Tucker mentioned last year at their annual meeting that they were going to have the realignment committee look at going to a 4 AA class, which obviously we can subdivide. We do it for football, but that's still technically 4 classes. But in all essence, I mean, it's basically a 5th class. So I sat down and I subdivided the 1A and the 4A into 2 separate divisions. And the reason for that is those are the 2 classes where you see the largest difference in the number of students between the smallest school in that class and the largest school in that class. Like right now in 4A, the difference is over 2,400 students. In 1A, it's about 750. So there's a huge divide there as to the number of people in a school. So to address the charter school parochial school issue, a lot of the charter schools and parochial schools that people have issues with because they dominate a lot of the 1A sports are coming from the big metro areas like here in the Triangle, down there in Charlotte, and the suburban areas around Raleigh and Charlotte, over in the Triad as well. And so I decided that instead of saying, hey, every single charter school and every single parochial school is going to have a multiplier of 2 or 3 or whatever, there should be a sliding multiplier that's based on the county population size. So here, if you're in Wake County, if you're in Mecklenburg County, 2 largest counties, obviously in North Carolina, you're going to be a larger, your multiplier is going to be larger than if you're, say, Beargrass Charter out in Williamston.
Right.
So that's kind of how I came up with it. And then I just had to play with the parameters of it to see exactly what made the most sense. And on my article, I put out several of the plans that I developed, but there's one that it's basically 12 and a half, 12 and a half. in 4AA, 4A, 1A, and 1AA, and then 25 and 3A and 2A. And that's the one I kind of settled on. Is I think this is the one that would work the best.
Yeah. Chris, your thoughts on his plan? I mean, we hear a lot about the disparity in numbers, particularly in the 1A class and 4A class. This would solve that.
First and foremost, I have also put a lot of schemes together of how I would do a realignment proposal. And what Nick has put together is the closest to what I hit on. For the record, Nick, I think that's the most well thought out sliding scale of a multiplier I've ever seen. And I really like that proposal because let's just take it for what it is. It's not apples to apples when talking about all charter schools. Let's look at Greystone Academy, which is in Stanley County, which is mostly an academic school. You know, they don't necessarily pull from athletic fertile areas and don't compete at the top levels of athletics. So you don't want to just penalize them, but yet it still is what it is from where they're drawing to. I love the multiplier system. I think that's the best thing I have ever seen. I like the 12.5, 12.5, and then the 225s in the middle, settle on 6 state champions. But the questions that I still have are, will we subdivide for all sports? Are we just looking at this from a football only perspective? Because I think that most of us agree that 8 champions is a little bit too much in football, just in terms, and I hate to use this word, but the watered down aspect of it. I think 8 champions is too much, but I do like the idea of 6, but are we going to go to 6 for all sports, or are we going to settle with 6 just for football?
So the what I put together, and this is kind of the downfall of that a lot of people see in this, and I actually agree. With the 2A and 3A, the size that they are in this, I don't see how we would not stop subdividing for football. So I still think we would have 8 champions. I don't think there's really a way outside of that until some of these amendment proposals get passed. You know, for now, I think we're going to have to stick with that. But I think 6 champions in the other sports is reasonable. You know, and I think that for 1A, 1AA, 4A, 4AA, you could probably reduce the size of the bracket maybe in half. You know, right now, instead of 64, have 32. It could be even somewhere between 24 and 32, really, with the number of, there's only 52 or 53 schools in each of those classifications. So I think that would be more than fair. Depending on how you want to do buys. For football, football is just a different animal altogether than most other sports. So I think that it would make sense to continue doing the subdividing, even though a lot of people don't like that, at least until we can get some sort of amendment passed down the road, hopefully by the membership. Because the funny thing is that a lot of what people on Twitter, coaches, ADs and stuff say, or just say to me, you know, privately, I'm like, but you didn't vote for the amendment. We could have done this if you voted for the amendment. And so now our hands are kind of tied as to what we can do as a state.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that when the 2 votes to try to get Catholic eliminated from the association came out. You know, to talk to people, you feel like there was this big push for this, but then the vote came, there weren't no votes. Same with the 5A class. We hear Chris and I talked about it all fall. Everybody wants a 5A class. Well, everybody didn't vote. I mean, I can see your point, Nick. Randall, what are your thoughts about the whole proposal having, you know, 6 state champions except for football? You think that's a better thing, having fewer teams in the playoffs?
I thought, you know, when I read it, it made so much sense that I could see it not working. It was one of those things where I was like, oh, this is too good to be true. And, you know, just one of those things. I do still think that, you know, you cut down the playoffs. You don't let as many teams in. I think everybody getting in is one of the big struggle points with this in general. And it's still, I've finally gotten used to how things are here in North Carolina. Coming from Ohio, the whole private-public separation was always weird to me because, you know, for me, it was you know, private-public didn't matter when it came time for the playoffs. Everybody was, you know, they separated us Division I, Division II, Division III, Division IV based on size, and you just went to go play your sport. So, but I think, you know, like I said, the proposal that he put together was awesome, especially with the sliding scale. I just hope that it doesn't make too much sense that it doesn't work.
No, I agree with you. And I think, I went to the Western Regionals and Winston-Salem Prep was playing. And, first of all, you always say Winston-Salem Prep's a private school. And Nick is always saying they're not a private school. And I'm like, yeah, he's right. But it's like that is always an issue because Winston-Salem Prep dominates in some sports in those smaller classes. And this would eliminate that because now they'd be playing larger schools. And I think everybody happy.
So, well, Langston, I'm glad. I'm sorry, Nick.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Let me hop in here on Winston-Salem Prep, and I'm glad you brought that up because I know we talk about what defines a charter school, but maybe we need to talk about what defines an LEA and a traditional LEA versus a non-traditional. Because all of Forsyth County, I live here in the county. My children go in this school. I know the ins and outs of how the moving and shaking can go and going from one school to the other. Do you have a multiplier for schools like in Forsyth County where you can pretty much go where you want to? Or let's look at a Stanley County where anybody that wants to go to a certain school, especially if you want to go to North Stanley, you can go. And even Stanley County's opening up their borders to where if you live in another county and you want to come to Stanley County, you don't have to pay tuition. Rowan County's got a similar deal, trying to keep North Rowan's attendance levels at a certain level. I think you almost need to define if it's a traditional LEA or a non-traditional LEA and maybe add Nick's multiplier to those as well.
So that's one of the things that we talked about in that when I was putting this together, and I got some feedback from some folks, even some folks who were on the realignment committee on this before I published it. And I think part of the problem is, how do we define what a non-traditional school or LEA is? So that's why for this, I went with LEA versus non-LEA. So Winston-Salem Prep is a public magnet school within Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools. Here in Wake County, we have several magnet schools: Millbrook, Garner, Broughton, Enlow. Are magnet schools. And there's other smaller, I believe Granville Central is a magnet school actually. And they had a very good season in boys basketball this year at the 1A level too. So, I don't know how you can go about, they're all different. Like every district has their own enrollment policies. And I think it's also important for us to remember in these situations, these school systems are not developing their enrollment policies around athletics. Right. They're developing them because of academic reasons. And a lot of times here in Wake County, for example, they put magnet schools in areas where they want to bring in people to come to those schools in those areas to try and make the schools better and provide more diversity in the school and all that kind of stuff. So when they set those parameters around their enrollment, the superintendents aren't thinking about athletics when that happens. And I think there would be some substantial pushback from superintendents if the NCHSAA tried to do something around magnets, because if there's any sort of wall preventing people from participating in athletics, they're not going to go to magnet schools, which defeats the purpose of them. Yeah. So I don't know that is something that the association, the board of directors, or the districts as a whole would go for.
Do you guys think that eventually charter schools should have their own classification, their own playoff? That's something I hear all the time.
It would work in some sports, especially as the number of charter schools keeps growing. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of charter schools would be okay with that, actually. But again, we can't do that because the amendment proposal was voted down.
And Randall, you said you did not like that idea if it were to come.
No, I don't. That adds a whole nother element. Now you got private, charter, public. It's just too much, too many different subcat. It creates a whole nother set of issues, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. Nick, the effects of coronavirus up in your area, I mean, what are kids saying about, losing spring sports pretty much? And I know Q Tucker, the Commission Association, really still wants to have a basketball championship, but it's going to be really hard if we come back to school at all to have a championship in late May, early June.
Yeah, I get more and more discouraged every day about what's about to happen. I think obviously for the basketball teams that are supposed to be playing for state championships, it's heartbreaking for them because they're probably going to lose the opportunity to play for a state title, which for most people is a once in a lifetime thing. So, I feel really bad for all of those teams across the state. I also feel terrible for the seniors who are expecting to have senior seasons in their spring sports, who now, I think it would almost be easier to know that it isn't going to happen than it is right now, just not knowing. Just we're trying to prepare, but we don't really know, and we probably think probably not.
Yeah.
And then I think, I was talking to somebody this morning, a football coach up here. I don't think it's unreasonable for us to start discussing how this might impact football.
That was my next question. I was going to ask Chris. I mean, you're as
Yeah.
tied into football as anybody I know in North Carolina. I saw President Trump say this may go into July before it kind of washes through his words. So that means we won't have spring practice. There won't be a lot of practice in June, and kids are going to go out in July. I mean, could football possibly be affected schedule-wise by all of this? I mean, real football game.
I think it could. I am no expert, no medical expert, so I have no idea how long this pandemic is going to go. But I have a fear that we will not go back to school at all this year, and that's my concern with 2 children upstairs right now playing.
Shouldn't they be learning, Chris? They shouldn't be playing. Come on now.
iReady and all the different programs their teachers sent. But I have coaches every day who you see on social media putting out workouts that they're trying to encourage their players to do and do in their own spare time. But this is certainly going to affect, obviously, no spring development, no spring football of any kind, most likely. And if it goes on into the 7-on-7s, I certainly think it's going to hurt football. Now, do I think hopefully this is passed and we have everything ready for August for the kickoff of the 2020 season. But, one thing I've heard from some coaches that have been buying for some jobs that are open is that now, the whole process of the last 2 or 3 dozen jobs or so that are open, they're not even doing interviews right now. So, that part's kind of hanging in the balance.
And what if you're a kid and you're trying to figure out your recruiting? You can't take a visit. You can't go see the campus you're trying to go to. And Randall, and from a training perspective, Randall, what happens to a kid who sits at home and really doesn't work out for a couple months and all of a sudden has to go play his sport? Does that increase the rate of injury?
Disaster, yes, because you're probably going to come back out of shape, which is a big thing with prevent. When it comes to injury, a lot of it has to do with that. And if you haven't been working out for a couple of weeks, a month and a half, that number goes up. But also just the state of just staying sharp and being ready. I mean, you got to think of it from a basketball perspective. It affects. Does this affect your team camps that coaches can now come to? Does it affect the NCAA camps? I mean, this is really going to hurt a lot of those seniors as they get ready for their last ride.
Well, I think that's the big concern that a lot of people have for the seniors. Obviously, basketball is part of that right now, but you look at all the sports. I got an email today from Miles Split about how it's impacting track and field athletes. Baseball players, there's MLB scouts who would usually be out there watching games right now, and they're missing those opportunities. So how does it impact the MLB draft? Assuming there is one at some point. There's just so many things, and I don't think we all really have an idea of how much this is going to change high school athletics. I think it is going to change high school athletics. I know it's changing the way that we're doing things here at high school OT, and I've told my team, we've got to do our best just to adapt and get through it. And I think in the end, when we get to the other side of this, when it is time for us to go back out and cover sports again, I think we'll be better at doing it. I think we'll have a better product.
I hope so. And just to kind of wrap it up, I want to thank Nick for coming on again, but I really like the idea that you proposed. And, I don't know where it kind of goes from here. Hopefully somebody association takes a look at it, because it would solve a lot of issues that we have with playoffs and people thinking somebody has an advantage. But I guess my last question is, how would you guys do conferences under such an alignment? Would there be a need to change conferences?
So I purposely did not publish anything with conferences because I know that that's like a really sore topic every time we do realignment is how the conferences look. So I didn't want to take away from the actual point of what I was trying to get across.
Fair enough.
I have done a little bit of it just for my own purposes. And what I would propose is, I don't know why. Yes, we have 4A and 4AA. There's no reason we wouldn't have them all in one conference. There's a 4A conference and a 1A conference, just like we do in football right now. And then they go their separate ways come playoff time. But that's how I would recommend doing it, which doesn't really change much compared to how we are doing it currently.
I like that. Randall, what do you think? We just did conferences together and just went to playoffs. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it because, like I said, with the charter schools, you talk about realignment with the conferences, and that can open a whole nother.
They got some long trips too.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris, I give you the final word, man. What you got?
Hey, going back to these conferences, I don't mind, and I've had so many ADs, coaches, and just fans in general talk to me about this. I am okay with city, county, regional conferences put together that might have a 3A team with a 4A team. It keeps rivalries together. Obviously, you don't want to have drastic number differences in ADMs when you put these conferences together. But if you keep it within reason, I love having close conferences because it keeps the rivalries, it keeps the travel to a minimum, and I just think it makes the competition better. And then when you do go outside of your regions for travel for playoffs, I think it makes it that much more special.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for joining us. Chris, one of these days we're going to make you commissioned association when Q Tucker steps down. She's the best, but you can be the next best. Big thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate you having you on. Appreciate having you on. I'm tongue-tied. Maybe one day you come back and join us in the future. Can we get a future date?
Sure, absolutely. Anytime.
All right, man. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us. I'm really tongue-tied today. Thanks for joining us, Randall. And we'll catch you guys next time. Take care.